Here we are, back in the basement, Tim Alberino. We've done so many shows together. Obviously, we don't have to do a long intro, but...
Back in the blurry basement.
Welcome here. Welcome back. A lot of UFO stuff in the news lately. It'd be great to catch our listeners up and ourselves. Where are we at? What's going on? Age of Disclosure movie's coming out. And
Came out.
It's out already?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is another Spielberg movie.
There's a Spielberg movie coming.
Yes. And then Age of Disclosure is a doc.
It's called something Disclosure, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Age of Disclosure was made by a guy that worked with Spielberg.
Okay. So it's like a prequel of...
I think his name is Daniel Farah. He worked with Spielberg. And so he's collaborating. He collaborated also on the film. So those two things are kind of he collaborated also on the motion picture that's coming out. So those two guys have those two films, those two projects, the documentary and the movie are kind of...
That's what I was wondering.
A loose association between them.
Yeah. So Disclosure Day comes out summer, I think, right?
Disclosure Day, that's right. Yeah. I mean, the documentary came out...
End of November.
End of November, that's
it
right.
was November 21st, and
That's
it broke
correct.
a ton of records on Amazon. And of course, it's narrated by Lou Elizondo, who you know. And
yeah, Lou was the primary personality in the film. So basically it featured Lou and the group that worked at ATIP, including the physicists, Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis were the two main physicists, were the scientific commentators in the film. It was Jay Stratton, Lou Elizondo, and Jay and Lou worked together. And then there was a constellation of political figures in the film,
okay,
including Marco Rubio. Now, Marco Rubio has kind of backpedaled a little bit since the release of that film, but he actually had a really strong contribution to the film. Did you guys see it?
No.
Age of Disclosure? So I watched it, and then I did a review on it on my YouTube channel, and I didn't think that my review of Age of Disclosure was going to be very controversial, but people are having a really hard time. Let me be more specific. Christians are having a really hard time with this stuff.
Yeah.
They really are. And all I did was review the film, and I know Lou Elizondo. He's a friend of mine, and I've been involved in this topic, embedded in this topic for quite some time now. And I know some of the players who were involved at the governmental level. And it's kind of frustrating to me to see all the denial. Because I don't really get confronted. Let me back up. Age of Disclosure was a very well-produced film, and it was very sequential. And I think they made probably the strongest case that I've ever seen in a documentary film. They proved conclusively, I think, that the crash retrieval program is real, that the phenomenon is real. And you had, intelligence community guys, people who've never spoken up before, who've come forward in this film. And it's very difficult to rationally deny the reality of this situation. So I didn't think, again, having watched Age of Disclosure and doing a review, I didn't think there was anything really controversial about it. And if you look at the UFO community, like UFO Twitter, there is really no controversy there about the film. Most people applauded the film. It was well done and compelling. Although you have your group out there, let's call it the secular UFO community. You have a portion of this community that is going to reject anything that comes from Lou Elizondo and Jay Stratton and David Grush and any of those kind of people just because of their association with the government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everybody says you can't trust Lou Elizondo because he was a counterintelligence agent. Well, people don't understand what counterintelligence is. Counterintelligence is gathering information. You're finding out what the enemy knows about your operations. That's counterintelligence. You go in there and you find out what the enemy knows. It's not creating lies and deceiving the American people. That's not what counterintelligence is. And people think that because Lou worked in counterintelligence, that anything coming from Elizondo or his group is deception, is government deception. And it's just not accurate. It's just not accurate at all. So there's nothing really new revealed in the film. it concretizes what we already know about disclosure, about the phenomenon and the legacy reverse engineering program. But it does it in a way that is, I would say, indisputable because of the figures that they have, the personalities.
What level of knowledge would you suggest that the viewer would have to have on the subject?
They made the film in such a way that you can be completely green. You could be going into this not knowing anything. They did a really good job with that. So the UFO community, the secular UFO community, was either not too impressed because they're already informed of a lot of this, or they're just Lou Elizondo haters and they just reject the whole thing out of hand because it's coming from the government, which is not true. But it's the Christian community that kind of having a fit about this thing.
Why do you think so?
Because a lot of Christians are willing to contemplate the UFO phenomenon and aliens inside of a Nephilim / fallen angel / demon paradigm. But unfortunately for these people, the realities of a legacy crash retrieval program, because they talked about bodies in this film. They also talked about the Collins elite. And the Collins elite is a group of evangelical Christians at the Pentagon and in the intelligence community who are actively discouraging disclosure and to some extent impeding it, because they believe that this whole phenomenon is just a gigantic deception and we shouldn't look at it or be interested in it. They're just trying to shield our eyes from it. You know, like if you're sitting, like my dad used to do to me, we'd be watching TV and some commercial would come on with girls in bikinis and he'd put his hand over my eyes or tell us to put our hands over our eyes. That's what the Collins elite is trying to do.
It's like the Double Mint commercials from the 80s where they had the twins. They're like, don't look at this.
Well, that sounds like Genesis 6. You know, that's kind of what they did back in the day.
Well,
they don't want to look at that either.
You can conceptualize the phenomenon in that way. You guys can, but a lot of other people can't. They're having a real hard time. So they can't. I encounter a lot of Christians who will say, yeah, it's like Genesis 6, but as soon as you introduce into this scenario functional technology and biologicals, you have a problem. We've talked about this a lot of times on the show, because you can't reverse engineer spiritual, supernatural technology.
I was more saying like Genesis 6, most of the church wanted to reject that narrative.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
And most Christians probably want to reject the UFO alien
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about Christians who
are in the Genesis 6 space, Nephilim space.
Who've been red-pilled, so to speak.
Still having a hard time.
Are having a hard time because they were very comfortable with the idea of all of this just being demonic.
Right.
Because there's a lot of guys out there who don't really know anything about ufology who are saying that this whole thing is just demons, a masquerade of demons. Even people who I highly respect.
But you could say it's demonic evil. Demons, no.
That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys out there, like, again, who I highly respect, like Hugh Ross, who is a astrophysicist, brilliant astrophysicist. And Hugh has a very different perspective on Genesis. He has a long creation history perspective, the ages of creation. So he would push the creation of Adam way back into the distant past and the universe at 4 point whatever billion years it's at now. But he rejects outright the notion that there's any kind of extraterrestrial anything or aliens or anything like that. And he just glibly dismisses the whole thing as demons. So that position is held by a lot of Christians. I'd say the majority of Christians that I interact with. But as soon as you have crash retrievals in bodies, that explanation doesn't work anymore. And this film, as I said earlier, it concretizes the idea that we have crash retrievals and bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as I said, furthermore, that there's a group inside of government comprised of evangelical Christians who are blocking efforts to disclose this information to the American public.
Can we talk a little bit, because I don't think we've covered the Collins elite a whole lot on the show. It's a group of Christians, but like, how long has this been going on? Who is involved in this Collins elite group? I guess my question for that is this where we get a lot of people that just talk about Project Bluebeam. This is all holograms. This is all government deception. This is all meant to, for you to focus over here, but something else is going on over here. I mean, who are these people? How long have they been doing what they've been doing?
What do you do, Luke? It's the modern world. How do we find a good doctor?
Well, we got to get up to modern world speed. Join us by using ZocDoc, because finding a doctor you actually like is sometimes like finding a diamond in the rough. And sure, you want someone to network for your insurance nearby with open time slots, but that's just the beginning.
That's right. You can find doctors who actually take your insurance, see real availability, and book appointments online on your phone without all the runaround, because life's busy. One thing you don't want to be blurry is who's helping you get healthy. ZocDoc is a free app and a website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone that you love.
Whether you're looking for dermatology, dentistry, primary care, eye care, or one of the other 200 specialties offered on ZocDoc, you can easily search by specialty or symptom to build the care team that's right for you. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states. Nate, you had a tooth problem recently.
That's right. It's time for those wisdom teeth to go, and you needed help. And ZocDoc came in great right there to help me book an appointment and get that out. So I would recommend ZocDoc to anyone.
So when you're ready, you can see their real-time availability and click to book instantly, no phone tag, no waiting around. And appointments made through ZocDoc happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/blurry to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/blurry, ZocDoc.com/blurry. Thank you, ZocDoc.
The so-called Collins elite, this really came forward in Nick Redfern's book. I can't remember the title of it, but Nick Redfern, who's a ufologist, wrote a book, and I'm sure the title will pop into my head randomly here as I'm talking, as is often the case. And he wrote about this secret group inside of government who are specifically evangelical Christians who are convinced that, as I said earlier, the UFO phenomenon isn't just demonic, it's literally demons manifesting, and that to interact with it is akin to witchcraft, is akin to divination, something on that level, right? That's the idea. So they feel like they're protecting the public from a deception. So as I've always said about the Collins elite, I do believe this group exists. I don't know that they're very organized. And I don't think that they would call themselves the Collins elite. I suspect they're much more loosely organized than Redfern thinks. But I've always said that I think they have good intentions. Lou Elizondo's confronted them directly, or they've confronted him more accurately, and they basically told Lou and Jay Stratton, stop looking into this. Stop this. We know what this is. This is demons. And they asked Lou, have you read your Bible lately? And Lou said, I don't understand. These are demons. Stop looking into this. So I think what you have here is zeal without knowledge. You have these individuals who are zealous, who are, I would say, sincere.
Yeah.
Christians. I would also probably say superstitious, and who believe that shielding the eyes of the public from the realities of the UFO phenomenon is somehow godly. And I would say the opposite is true. I would say that the obfuscation of the truth is ungodly.
Yeah.
And that they're not helping the American populace by attempting to impede disclosure. And so here's a
yeah, I don't think the Bible ever does that either. It doesn't tell you things don't exist. It says don't participate in them. It doesn't say that forms of witchcraft aren't real. And obviously you could argue that having knowledge of all these things and then being told not to do it, it's more of a mature adult way of telling your kid or telling people what not to do or what to do. I think, we grew up in church where all the times it just, everything was shielded from you. Then you get to a certain age and you get access and you go crazy, right? And I think that these people are going to run into the ancient aliens content at some point. And then a lot of people have walked away from Christianity because they don't have the information. Then they have an encounter or something, and then they go, well, this changes everything. But you're kind of on the front lines of trying to help Christians understand that it's more. I guess one of my questions for you then would be, when did you start to think, what happened for you to go, as a Christian, this is not demons, this is something else? Where were you at when that happened?
I was sitting next to Gary Stearman at Prophecy Watchers. Years ago, I was there doing an interview for a film that Steve Quayle and I were producing. And Gary was off camera relating to me his encounter with the UFO, which you guys have featured. He's come on your show, which I found to be deeply compelling. And Gary believes that these weren't like just like benevolent aliens or something. He believes these were angels.
Yeah.
And they saved his life. Not only did they save his life, it was that incident that changed the course of his life, because when he ascended into the heavens in his airplane, he had no intention of being, that day, he had no intention of being a Bible teacher. By the time he landed, he knew. He knew that he was supposed to be a Bible teacher because of that encounter with those beings in the craft. It was that life-altering, career-altering for Gary. It wasn't just an interesting, fascinating experience. And so I often use this term because I think it's appropriate. The theological furniture in my mind was being rearranged.
So were you kind of agnostic to aliens? Or
No. I had not yet contemplated the idea that both the good guys and the bad guys are utilizing technology. I think I was still thinking about this topic from a supernaturalist perspective. And I don't like the word, as everyone knows, I don't like the word supernatural because it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, most people on our show now are saying that. It's more and more like,
It's meaningless. It's a nothing word. It doesn't describe
So you
anything.
believed in UFOs, you believed in aliens, but you just didn't know where to stick it? You didn't know where to put it?
I had just simply not contemplated that angels are operating physical technology. And when Gary told me his story, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, it was so foreign to my thinking. I had embraced the reality of the UFO phenomenon and the gray aliens and everything like that. And I never thought that this was a supernatural phenomenon or a spiritual phenomenon. I always knew it was physical because of the abduction material, which I was well versed in by this time. But when Gary told me the story of how these two, essentially what he believes are angels, I think he assumes there was more than one in the craft, saved his life and set him on the course to preach the gospel as a serious student of the Bible. I realized in that moment that I was not thinking rationally about the kingdom of heaven. And that created a cascade of events. And as I said, it rearranged the theological furniture in my head. And I had to grapple with the idea that the kingdom of heaven is a functional kingdom. And that angels they must develop and use technology. So in other words, they're not all that different than we are. Is a civilization.
But then you have a lot of Christians say they would say, well, the fallen angels are the bad ones using the UFOs. What's the difference between a fallen angel and an alien?
Depends on the context. So a fallen angel, quote unquote fallen angel, is an extraterrestrial. They're not from the earth. They're from somewhere else in the universe, or however you would like that. You can say, well, they're just interdimensional beings. Okay, well, they're still extraterrestrial. It doesn't matter. They're not from here. I don't care where you think they're from. They're not from here. That's clear, biblically speaking. And so therefore, they are by definition extraterrestrial. That's all that extraterrestrial means. A being whose provenance is not planet Earth. Okay, so if you ask me, are angels extraterrestrial? I'd say absolutely, they're extraterrestrial. Are angels aliens? Well, are they us? Are they human? No. Okay, so they're alien.
Yeah.
Now, I don't like that designation because it conjures up pop culture ideas about aliens. But they are, technically speaking, they're not us. Anything that's not us is, by definition, alien to us. But what happens is people automatically conflate in their minds a gray alien with an angel, which I think there's an important distinction there. The angels, as I've said many times on your show, I consider the angels to be a race. They're an angelic civilization. They pre-exist us.
So when you're talking to people in this space about aliens, are they particularly thinking like grays?
You mean the controversy? You mean the Christians having a hard time digesting this stuff? Is that is that the audience you're referring to, or just people in general?
Just like people in the UFO space.
In the UFO space, you have the traditional
when they say
view.
aliens, like what are they thinking?
Well, today you have a lot of people who are in the UFO space who are new to it, and who are not versed in any of the material, who aren't versed in the decades of very good, competent research on this topic, where a lot of the questions have been answered. Like, it's like people who are trying to learn the history of America, say, or they're interested in the history of America, but only going back to 2020.
Yeah. Right.
So they don't have any historical background.
Yeah.
They're just jumping in 2020, and they think the whole thing began with COVID-19.
Yeah.
So that's how the UFO, a lot of these newcomers to the UFO community are. Their roots in ufology only go back to the hearings.
Or Chris Bledsoe or something, right?
Or something like that. Yeah. Or Joe Rogan talking about UFOs on his podcast, or American Alchemy, that podcast, something like that in that vein. That's their depth of ufology. But there's this entire history behind all of this where a lot of the questions have already been answered. We already know the answers. We know the answers because of people like the phenomenal researcher Leonard Stringfield, who for decades ago was writing about the crash retrieval program.
Yeah.
People like Stanton Friedman.
John Mack,
Dr. David Jacobson, Dr. David Jacobs, Carla Turner, in regard to the abduction phenomenon itself. A lot of these old school UFO researchers who, as I said, have already, I think, drawn the right conclusions about the phenomenon based on the research, based on the data. But today, you have a whole host of newcomers who, because they don't have that background, they haven't familiarized themselves with these people's work.
Yeah.
They are trying to answer the questions that are already answered, and they're doing it with all these newfangled ideas.
If you're a pet owner and you own a dog, what can you do, Luke?
Well, I got to tell you, like, I've got old dogs. We've got 2 older dogs, and they slow down a little bit. They start having some health issues. A lot of times you can think it just comes with age. What I found is that this new product called Rough Greens, and I gave it to the dogs, and I'm seeing a real difference. They are obsessed with these chews, honestly. They love these things. Stuff is amazing. What Rough Greens is something that supports long-term health by providing live, bioavailable ingredients, essential vitamins, minerals, probiotics, digestive enzymes, omega oils. All these things work together to help your dog be a healthier version, enhance vitality, maintain joint and muscle health, and it promotes longevity by addressing some of the deficiencies a lot of dogs have because of the dog food they eat.
Just like us, we need to take supplements and we need to take care of our health and all the things coming at us. Your dogs aren't out of that league as well. So.
And this is actually like a scientifically developed by a doctor, Dr. Dennis Black. He's been helping humans and pets for the last 25 years, and he's a 40-year cancer survivor, and he really wanted to do something to help out our furry little friends.
That's right. There's no need to change your dog's food. This is like a supplement. It's an addition to your dog's. It's live supplement that you can add into your dog food and help improve your dog's health. Just a scoop of Rough Greens, and that's all you have to do.
And listen, we just don't recommend Rough Greens. We actually use it. We depend on it. Rough Greens is offering a free Jumpstart trial bag. You just got to cover shipping. Use discount code Blurry to claim your free Jumpstart trial bag at roughgreens.com. That's RUFF greens.com. Promo code Blurry. So don't change your dog's food. Just add Rough Greens and watch the health benefits come alive.
Well, that's what I was trying to get to. The Christian hang-up is aliens are fallen angels. That's all. They put those together.
That's a trope. That's right. Yeah.
But I think to your point, though, I think it's what with Gary Stearman, right? We had an episode 238. Like, that busts a hole in everything because you have a man that's saved by a UFO whose trajectory of his life changes to spreading the gospel based upon being saved by a UFO.
Yeah.
So if you're saying these are all fallen angels and it's all demonic,
a deception,
right? Well, people would say that I think people can get scared by demonic things and they could change their life, but this is not a scare. This is a
positive
saving.
outcome.
Yeah, it's a positive outcome. When you have to put that in the mix and say This guy had the story forever, didn't tell it publicly for a long time, but he has this whole encounter that with something that's benevolent in an unidentified flying object that saves his life, and the trajectory of his life changes, right? Not because he's scared, but because he gets saved. And you have to throw that and say, how do we, if your hypothesis is all demonic, these are all demons, that doesn't fit. It doesn't work, right? And that's just one of a bunch of things I know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the popular, I would say that's the conventional Christian perception, that this is just all demonic deception.
Because we're not told about it in the Bible, or we're not.
Yeah, and so Christians, I think, they're very reactionary in the sense that the first thing that they think is that something is deceptive and demonic, which isn't necessarily a bad default. I mean, you want to be on guard, but it's just not accurate. There's nothing biblical about that, and the good guys outnumber the bad guys.
Yeah, obviously.
And the good guys and the bad guys come from the same place. They're not different species. They're the same people with different allegiances. And for some reason, a lot of Christians have a hard time accepting that reality. They want to see demons and fallen angels as these very ugly, scary, grotesque beings who are clearly demonic in every way, and they fail to realize that there's nothing essentially very different between a quote-unquote fallen angel and a loyal angel in heaven. I mean, these are the same guys.
Right.
It's a question of allegiance.
Mm-hmm.
So their allegiance changes, but not their appearance, at least not so dramatically that one looks like the typical caricature of a demon or Satan, and the other one looks like, a beautiful blonde-haired young man with eagle wings. That's not the reality.
But in this film, what do they portray aliens as? Are they the grays?
So it's very simple.
Okay.
The way that this film approaches this is that this is non-human intelligence and that it's biological. Now, you can speculate as to whether or not it's cybernetic as well, or there's an artificial intelligence component. But the film doesn't really care about those questions. The film focuses on what I think are the essentials, which are there's a crash retrieval program.
Mm-hmm.
We have the material, we've been reverse engineering this technology, and we have the bodies. And the government is, to some extent, when you say the government, that's way too broad of a statement.
Right.
It's hard to make any kind of different statement. I mean, because we don't know exactly which factions inside of government are the secrecy group or are part of the disclosure group. So, but it's hard to find the right terminology. So it's not that the government itself is holding back this information or disclosing it. It's factional. So what we're seeing is a factional conflict. You're seeing elements of individuals who work in elements of the government are pro-disclosure, and then other individuals are pro-secrecy, among those who know anything about the topic at all. And Elizondo, regardless of these guys' politics, this is another thing. People keep injecting the politics into this issue. This is a nonpartisan issue. It really is a nonpartisan issue. This transcends politics. People have a hard time disassociating politics from anything.
Yeah.
And I understand why, but it's not, this is not political. There are Democrat operatives who are attempting to inform the public of the reality of the UFO phenomenon, and there are Republican operatives. And some of these guys, like Christopher Mellon, are friends with John Podesta and the Bidens, and that they're from that faction. They're from the Biden, Obama, Podesta, Clinton faction. And so people say, "Oh, Christopher Mellon, has these associations," and then they make a political association to the bad guys. And so therefore, Christopher Mellon is clearly lying, but no one ever comes forward, at least to me, and demonstrates what they're lying about. They just think, oh, they're lying. It's a deception. Okay, so my question, because you're going to get a lot of hate comments on this one. My question is, if you're going to come out and say PSYOP, deception, blue beam, whatever, then you need to specify, you need to articulate what precisely are these guys saying, or let's be specific to the film. What information is being presented in Age of Disclosure that is a deception? What is it? Mm-hmm. Is it the crash retrieval program? Sorry, that's real. That's not deception. That's the truth. Is it the speculation, the hypotheses about how the craft operate? No, I think the hypotheses are that they put forward in this film, that they offer, are very rational. They do a really good job of that, by the way. Is the deception what? That there's biological bodies associated with these crash retrievals? No, that's not a deception. These guys don't try and tell you what they are. They don't do that. They don't say, well, the grays are aliens from Zeta Reticuli. They don't do that.
Right.
They're just trying to drive home the reality that this is
facts.
happening. Here's the facts. And they're telling the American people that this is real, and the American people, a large part of them, refuse to believe.
Well, that's an interesting.
We're finally being told the truth on some level, and now we have such conspiracy psychosis that people refuse to believe it.
Or people are politically binary. They're saying, well, if it's this side, then it's a lie, and if this side is the truth, and they make it a political issue when it's.
It's a hard part for a certain percentage of brains just can't get it, whether they're Christian or non-Christian.
That's true.
So, but then the Christians bring in a whole bunch of spiritual
baggage.
Theological
baggage.
I want to ask you a little bit about that, because Redfern's book, which is Final Events.
Final Events.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, he talks about the Collins elite there, right? This is the place that it happened. And one of the things that he points to is that the members of this faction, however loosely affiliated it is, they really predicate stuff on occult figures, Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons, in their work. Well, obviously, there's the famous thing where Crowley opens a portal, allegedly has this drawing of what looks like a gray coming through. And then, of course, Parsons does the Babylon workings. Are they trying to summon something? We've talked about psionics here.
Yeah, Lamb doesn't really look like a gray alien. He has the egg-shaped head.
But that's where they really predicate their hypothesis, or their conclusions on their hypothesis land there, saying these occult figures were attempting to channel, they're attempting to do workings, rituals in order to bring about these aliens, and we use that term loosely, but this is why it's a demonic deception, is these people that were obviously in some shape or form Satanists, which they were. Crowley was.
That's kind of a different question. So these are two different questions,
right?
And people have to differentiate these questions in their mind. Have occultists made contact with non-human intelligence? That's question one. Question two. Is there a crash retrieval program with biological bodies? Two separate questions.
Right.
People are conflating these. These are two separate questions. The answer to both of these questions is yes. But the problem is people are denying this one over here because this one's yes, but they can't hold the two things in their mind at the same time. So if the occult aspect is yes, then this over here has to be the deception, right? No, the deception isn't the existence of a crash retrieval program. The deception isn't the biological reality of gray aliens. It's not a deception. That's just a fact. The deception is the messaging that's going to be coming in the future.
Yeah.
And there is no messaging yet, contrary to popular belief, aside from personalities like Chris Bledsoe. There is no messaging coming from the beings. There have been claims of contact for decades.
Unless you can, crop circles of some kind. Yeah.
There have been claims of contact for decades. These people were called contactees. And they claim to be in psychic contact with extraterrestrials. This goes back to the 40s. Mm-hmm. And they said that they were receiving messages. They said that they would engage in automatic writing, dictation from the beings, much like Aleister Crowley.
This is still happening. We get emails about people like this say they claim that they're having contact with.
This is contactees. The contactee phenomenon is very much interwoven with the New Age and spiritualism and all of that. Most of it is complete and utter hogwash. Most of it. Some of it is authentic in the sense that some of these individuals are, I'll be very specific, are abductees, are being abducted. And alien abduction is very practical. And we've talked about this ad nauseum on your show, but alien abduction is not the contactee phenomenon. And people are continually conflating these two things. So people will say, for example, well, we know that the abductions are demons, that the abductors, that the aliens are demons, because they're telling the contactees or the abductees, they're telling them that messaging that's contrary to the biblical narrative. They're interested in, apparently the aliens are interested in convincing human beings that Jesus isn't the Son of God or whatever. That stuff does not come from the abduction material. Understand, it doesn't come from the abduction material. That comes from the contactee material. These are two separate things entirely. Contactees are people who are mostly in the New Age, are making stuff up, or are having intercourse with demons, who are practicing divination or whatever. Abductees don't get very many messages. Most abductees don't get messages. Most abductees are desperate to learn things from the Greys when they're on, when they're in the environment, when they're on the craft, and the Greys don't tell them anything.
So they're like, when they're awake, they're lucid, and they...
Or if they're told anything, it's something along the lines of, this is for the future, what we're doing is for the future, something's coming, we're preparing you for what's coming, there's going to be an event, there's going to be a change that's going to happen, and you're going to be instrumental, you're special. That's the kind of things that abductees are told to console them during the procedure, to calm them down, to help them cope with what's happening. That's the only kind of messaging. Now, some abductees will walk away with screen memories in which they have these experiences with whatever. They have these experiences in which a beautiful being of light communicated some wonderful revelation to them. But really, that's not what happened. That's a screen memory. They were just laying on the table, if it's a woman having her ovaries, having her eggs extracted, or a zygote implanted or something like that. And this is the screen memory that she's left with, so that she has a positive association with the experience, because the experience is negative. It's always negative. Nobody wants to be forcefully taken anywhere. Nobody. I don't care who you are. You don't want to be forcefully taken anywhere and subjected to an invasive, embarrassing procedure, especially with other people around. And the reason why, I'm going down the abduction path, we've done this before, but the reason why so many abductees don't come forward with their stories is because there's embarrassing and compromising things that happen on board the craft. Abductees are sometimes forced to have intercourse with each other. So if you're a happily married person, that's the last thing you want to reveal to your spouse or anyone else. Yeah. Because you feel the guilt. It's infidelity, but it's not your fault. You have no control in those situations. So there's a lot of baggage that these people are carrying, and the ones who can remember, there's a lot of embarrassing stuff here, and that's the reality of the abductee phenomenon. The contactee phenomenon is I would say most of it, as I said before, is it's imagined. It's fanciful. And then you have individuals like Chris Bledsoe. I don't know Chris personally, but I suspect that Chris is an abductee. In fact, I'm quite positive.
I was going to ask you about that because
he's probably recounting a lot of screen memory material, and a lot of what he says is consistent with screen memory material I've heard from other abductees. So. And screen memories are false memories, as your audience I'm sure knows by now, implanted into the brains of abductees. So,
do you think he's practicing psionics as well? Because there's all these stories about his little things in the desert where they summon ships and they summon...
So I talked to, I don't want to say his name, but I talked to a whistleblower. And it's not Lou. I talked to a whistleblower who's involved in the psionic stuff, and I told him that I suspect that a lot of these psionic operators are abductees, because abductees are intrinsically connected to the phenomenon. The Greys know, if you're a woman and you're carrying a hybrid fetus in your womb, the Greys know if you're contemplating an abortion. They know it.
How?
Because they're interlaced telepathically with you.
What's the evidence for that?
It's in the abduction material. So you'll have a woman who is carrying a fetus, and she finds out she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm. And there's no way she could be pregnant.
She's no way she could be pregnant. She's baffled. Her gynecologist is baffled. And she's thinking, I don't know what this is. I don't know where it came from, but I'm going to abort it. And she's contemplating abortion. The Greys know she's contemplating abortion. They abduct her before the procedure, remove the fetus. She goes in for the abortion, and there's nothing there. Okay, that's not uncommon. And so the Greys are interlaced telepathically and technologically with an abductee because of the implants. So they know they're monitoring, and I hate to use these terms, but it's like cattle. It's like if you've got, I always think of my friend Brandon Haven, who he had a ranch in Australia. He had a big ranch, and he was too lazy to go out there and check on his cows when it sounded like maybe there was a commotion, something was going on. So what did he do? He put his drone up in the air. So he'd be sitting there in his house in his tidy whities, flying his drone over his fields, over his ranch to check on his cattle. So he something alerted him that there's something is amiss out there in the field. And so he deploys his drone to go see what's happening. Well, in the same way, abductees are interlaced with the phenomenon. If they're trying to connect with this phenomenon, they can inadvertently. And what happens? Almost invariably when someone, quote unquote, summons a UFO, it's not a saucer that shows up, it's an orb.
Mm-hmm. That's like Greer, right? That's what Greer's posits.
Most of the time it's an orb because it's like a reconnaissance. And I think it's automated. So they're checking on their cattle. And I hate to put it in those terms, but I think people understand the analogy I'm trying to draw here. So it's an automated response. And by the way, the individuals who I was positing this to were entirely in agreement with that assessment. And they told me in no uncertain terms that they know that some of their psionics operators are abductees. And they suspect that I'm correct in this analysis, that the psionic phenomenon is interlaced with the abduction phenomenon. And it makes perfect sense to me. And so I don't have any problem understanding how an abductee can summon an orb because the orbs are going to respond. It's surveillance, it's reconnaissance. And that's why orbs show up, for example, in an abductee's home before they're abducted oftentimes, because these are reconnaissance technology, and they can project thoughts through orbs. But they can project thoughts from a distance. Abductees can receive telepathic communication from a distance. And I suspect that the implants have something to do with this as well. I would venture to say that all abductees are implanted.
Yeah, we've done a lot of episodes on all these things.
We talked to Ellie Marzulli about
So
many?
You just got to kind of refresh people's, because there's a lot of voices in this space.
How many people in the UFO space are Christians?
I have no idea. I would say not many. I would say the majority of the UFO community.
So you're kind of you're in a very specific kind of a
lane.
Yeah. It's like the circles when you overlap. There's not very many people who are Christians who understand these things or also understand the Nephilim space, Genesis 6 space, UFO space, alien space, and the gospel. You're not going to have there's only a few people that are going to be in the middle of that.
I'm a investigative researcher. I just am interested in the truth. I don't care what the truth is. I don't have a vested interest in any of this in regard to a doctrinal position or anything. I believe in the gospel of Christ, and nothing can upend that foundational truth for me. Because nothing does. Because my paradigm is flexible and broad, and it can accommodate any of this without a problem. Because I believe, as we've discussed in previous occasions, I have a Christocentric perspective of the universe. My cosmology is Christocentric. Christ is at the center of all things. Everything revolves around him. This isn't my story. This isn't our story. It's his story. Mm-hmm. We're the spokes in the wheel. We're not the hub.
Why do you?
And so when you do that, when you remove yourself from the center of the story, you put Christ at the center, you realize you're just an ancillary character in this thing.
Yeah.
Then you can acknowledge that there's a lot you don't understand. There's a lot of realities that you can't comprehend. You concede to the fact that God doesn't tell you everything. He doesn't even tell you most things. He tells you some
freedom
things.
There too, Tim, because you don't have to hold a position and look for confirmation bias. You can just look for
the facts.
Data and the facts.
You just look for the facts and you assimilate the facts. And I don't come to the table with a fallen angel box. Okay, so here's my box. It's labeled fallen angel / Nephilim / demons. And then go out there in the world and try and cram everything I encounter into this little box I'm carrying around. That's what most Christians do. That's what a lot of my colleagues do. They cram it in there. They shove it in there, regardless if it's rational, regardless if it makes sense, regardless if these things conform to the facts. It doesn't matter. This is their predetermined explanation for any given phenomenon, and they shove everything into that box.
Do you think that keeps people in the UFO space from accepting the gospel because they see Christians doing that?
It keeps people in the UFO space from taking Christians seriously.
Yeah.
Because if you come to the table with a preconceived answer, well, what's my answer when I come to the table? My answer is that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of the living God. That's my answer. Now, does that answer anything to do with the UFO phenomenon? No, it doesn't have to, because that's the center of my world and my reality. But it doesn't necessarily answer any questions in regard to crash retrievals or alien bodies. It doesn't have to. Mm-hmm. That's the difference. I've liberated myself from these presuppositions, and there's a form of theological thinking called presuppositionalism. And what it is you come to the table with a set of presuppositions on any given topic. You have already determined that this is the way that everything must conform to this suite of presuppositions. Mm-hmm. And then you take whatever data you find out there in the world and you contort it and you twist it and you compress it to fit into one of your presuppositional slots.
That's why we have so many denominations in Christendom. I mean, honestly, right? Is everybody picks the hill they're going to die on, which really isn't. It's not the gospel ever. It's always it's predestination or eschatology or ridiculous things like when the Sabbath is, or people choose these lanes and they filter everything backwards through that minutia, right? Like, you're right. It's not only is it limiting, but it's also very narrow in the sense
it's conceded too, because I concede the reality that I know very little about anything. I concede that reality quite effortlessly. I can say, look, even if we took the compendium of human knowledge and you stuffed it into my brain, I still hardly know anything about the universe. Okay, I still hardly know anything about the kingdom of heaven. Well, I feel that way
in the show. More questions than answers.
Well, but that's a position. We have to start from a position of humility, understanding that what's been revealed to mankind is concrete. What's been revealed to mankind from God. But let's not pretend that everything's been revealed to us. Very little has been revealed to us.
Okay,
very little.
So most people will say in this situation, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, we're not talking about the gospel. You guys are talking about things that don't matter. Why do you think this conversation does matter? Because I think it does.
I don't care if it matters. I find it intriguing, and therefore I talk about it.
Well, I do too, but I think it matters.
I think the jumping off to that point, though, is that we started talking, and we're still talking about the age of disclosure, right? So you have this film that comes out end of 2025, and a lot of folks will say, "Oh, we're soft pedaling. This again is programming. It's setting up for the big event, right?" So I want to ask your opinion on this. So it's a documentary, and a lot of folks in our channels have said nothing new in it, right? And it's kind of what you repeated. There's nothing new in it. It lays it out, right? It's not like there's the new revelations necessarily in this. Maybe if you showed up in 2020,
it concretizes the reality,
right? But where do you think this is headed? Because it's headed to somewhere. I mean, we've talked about disclosure, and is that going to happen? When is it going to happen? But what is your take? You get to talk to a lot of people in your little don't sound demeaning, but in your UFO club, your folks, right? These are Congress.
Little UFO club. He was going to say that.
Well, these are Congress people. Hey, these are Congress people. These are intelligence people. Yeah. These are researchers. These are people that this is what they do, right? At least, or this is what they do, or they have a unique knowledge set based upon their position within the broad brush government, right? And you talk to these folks a lot. I know, because we talk offline about this. Mm-hmm.
Where are we going?
Well, where are we going with this? What do you think is happening here? Because it is opening the box to whoever, to your grandma who turns on Amazon and says, "This looks interesting," and she has no foundation for this.
So,
but it's becoming available to the masses. It's not it's not niche in the sense of maybe it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago.
You could think about this topic, UFOs, aliens, alien bodies, the whole topic, in the same way you think about Bigfoot.
Okay.
So there's many.
So Bigfoot, if he's real, if Sasquatch is real,
come on,
Sasquatch is real.
There's his print right here in front of me.
There it is. That's it. That's all I needed to see.
Exactly.
No, I believe, as you guys know, I believe that Sasquatch is real. So people don't approach that topic with the same questions they do this one. I find that interesting. You don't have all of the theological baggage, or at least not as much theological baggage when you think about Bigfoot, the reality of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And in that space, it's much more of a kind of a scientific inquiry, wouldn't you say? It's much more, people are interested in evidence for Bigfoot, prints. They're interested it's here on our realm. Yes, it's tangible. It's something. It's something that you can
Yeah.
It's a small enough mystery. It's a small enough paradox.
It's got limitations.
Yeah. And so people approach it differently.
Well, it's sort of inconsequential in some ways, but this is different.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, so if you approach the Bigfoot topic, what would you think about the following proposition? If I were to come to you, you're a Bigfoot researcher, and you've got evidence. You really have substantial evidence and reasons that you've accumulated, convincing reasons to believe in Bigfoot. And I come and I say to you, don't look at that. That's demonic.
They do that.
I know, but they don't do it as much in this space as they do the other. Don't look at that. That's demonic. Why are you looking at that? Why are you interested in that? The answer with Bigfoot's kind of much easier because you're like, well, I'm fascinated by this. I mean, like, look at this evidence.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, what does this mean? I mean, is this a relic hominid, or is this a Nephilim? Is this whatever? And the answer is simple in that space. You don't get a whole lot of controversy there. Right. You do among Bigfoot researchers, but that's not what we're talking about. But for whatever reason, you can't take the same approach in the UFO space because people get really upset. You can't say, well, I'm just approaching this in the same way. This is a fascinating topic, and I just want to ferret out the reality. I don't care about the theories. I don't care about the hypotheses. I don't care about the theological positioning. I don't care. That's what I don't care about. I just want to know what the reality of this is. That's all. And so I'm pursuing what's real. Right. Mm-hmm. And my pursuit of what's real doesn't need to be justified. I don't need to justify it to you theologically. Just because you're a Christian and you come to me and you say, and I'm not talking about you guys, I'm talking about the broader audience, why are you looking at that? This is a Collins elite. Why are you looking at that? It's just a deception.
Yeah.
It's anti-intellectual, for one thing. People don't approach other things like that. Would you say that about the Epstein files? Like, if we were here talking about the Epstein files instead of UFOs, and we're just sort of laying out the facts, and proposing a particular theory about the Epstein files, you wouldn't have people in your audience, maybe a couple, but the majority of your audience wouldn't come and say, why are you looking at that? That's just a deception.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And you're like, well, wait a minute. Well, what do you mean? We're just following the trail. We're just trying to figure out who's doing what and what the implications are for who's involved in this in our government, right?
Yeah.
This is just a scientific approach to a question. You're not allowed to do that with UFOs, according to many Christians. That's off limits. That one's off limits. You can't just be interested in the facts, report the facts as they are, follow the evidence. No, that is a different realm in people's mind. It's a different topic. They don't equate it with anything else. This is just a big, fat deception. Don't look at it. Cover your eyes. The problem isn't that people have been convinced one way or another. The problem is that people do not think rationally about this topic for whatever reason.
Well, I would say that, like, the difference to me about the two topics is that one has the potential to create an existential crisis for a lot of people. They're not. They're not.
I would say all three of those topics have that.
Well, potential. I mean, I'd say most people are going to be like, okay, so you've got a large bipedal creature that runs around and it's real. Okay, that doesn't really affect me.
What's the difference between that and a gray alien?
Well, because then there's a lot of questions that come along with that. Like, okay, now, we're not alone. Okay, I don't know what to do with that. Okay, all of the.
Well, you're not alone if the Bigfoot's real,
right? But I'm talking about in the universe, right?
He's already there.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like,
you haven't been alone
for a lot of folks. This is their paradigm's not busted by the realities of a Bigfoot creature existing, but I think a lot of folks would have an
like
existential crisis or a breaking of their
I mean,
paradigm.
just look
if
at the
they're
way they
confronted.
named the movies. Like The Day the Earth Stood Still, right? Like everybody is
The Battle for Earth, like the
Independence Day. It's like this moment where we're all together as a human race looking at this other race where suddenly all equal.
Right. And programming in media has like we talk about these movies has convinced or at least put this narrative out there that this is an existential crisis for the human race if this exists, right? If this is real. And I think that it makes a much different conversation around phenomena when not only maybe their theology gets broken if this is real because they don't have a space for that, right? We've talked about why there is a space. So this is not for us, right? But I think this is why it's different. I think the adverse or the knee-jerk reactions are because folks don't have a grid.
Well, maybe you have like Christians who are like, demons, angels, and Jesus. That's what exists, right? And us. And then you have academia. It's like evolution. We've come this whole way, and that's been pounded into their brains. And then this other has been pounded in our brains. And then there's this whole other option.
I don't believe in the theory of evolution. I think that it's not a very strong theory.
Well, sure. Most Christians.
But were it to be true, it wouldn't change much for me. It wouldn't change the fundamental tenets of my faith. It wouldn't. And there are plenty of Christians, even apologists, who have embraced the theory of evolution. They think that God is the architect of evolution. Again, I do not. But they do. People like William Lane Craig, the eminent apologist, and others, or individuals who are open to the theory of evolution, but certainly attest faith in Christ, a biblical faith in Christ.
What about you?
You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. That is the testimony of a Christian, that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. And then with, as you said, there's a 1,000 different theological positions on all kinds of topics surrounding that core reality. So in the same way that if it turned out that evolution was true, again, I'm very confident it's not. But if it did, it wouldn't bother me because my roots go deep in the gospel.
But I think this alien conversation blows it all out of the water. I think, what do people in that space believe about evolution?
So of course you have those who believe who are Sitchinites, who believe that the Anunnaki created us, that the Anunnaki chose a relic hominid. Well, this wouldn't be relic in this case, an ancient hominid species, and engaged in cross-species genetics with themselves, adding their own genetic material into the mix.
It's just a Genesis 6 reboot with the sons of God being at the top of the pantheon.
So the aliens created us, kind of a narrative. And what Christian do you have to warn? I mean, think about it. Do you really have to be warned that message isn't true? I mean, you should know that. If you believe in the gospel, if you believe in Christ, then you're going to reject that kind of a notion out of hand. It doesn't matter if it comes from a being in a flying saucer or whatever, right? Because you're firmly grounded in the gospel, and you know that that's a lie, that we were created by God in the image of God, and so it doesn't really affect you one way or the other. I mean, it's not going to move you in the same way that many other revelations wouldn't shake your faith in Christ. So I think what the problem here is not so much that people are afraid of being deceived. I think people are unwilling to, I'm going to use my phrase again, and I borrowed this, by the way, from Christopher Hitchens. I think people are afraid to rearrange the furniture in their brain. They're unwilling to unbind themselves, to
I think they're afraid to tear down a wall.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. They're afraid to unconstrain themselves
An open
to
floor
liberate
plan.
themselves from these boxes that they've been so comfortable in for so long.
Yeah.
Because as long as you've got these label boxes that you can shove everything into, you feel like you've got all the answers in the universe.
Very comfortable.
And that's the difference between me and a lot of people. I don't need all the answers. I can let the mysteries be mysteries, and I can follow the facts. And once you've liberated yourself from that, the existence of biological gray aliens means nothing to you. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't affect your worldview. You just assimilate the fact. Okay, I guess those exist, and there's no reason for me to deny the existence of biological gray aliens, even if I don't have an answer. It doesn't bother me that I don't have an answer. I don't need an answer. I don't need a gray alien to be a Nephilim.
But it could still be part of a deception. So let's keep going. So say that crash retrievals are real, aliens are real, but they can still, all that can be used for a deception.
Anything can be used for deception.
Yeah.
And everything is used for deception. So
Yeah.
the idea that the phenomenon itself is a deception
Yes.
is absurd. It's on its face absurd. That is just cognitive dissonance. Okay. You are just in a state of denial
Yeah.
at this point. Okay. So that is a way for people to not have to address these uncomfortable realities. So they just, it's all deception. It's blue beam or whatever. So you don't have to grapple with the hard questions then. You can just go on with your comfortable buckets and shove everything into those buckets
And every day
be
it's
merely
getting
on your way.
harder and harder and harder to have that position.
So you might as well just confront it head on and let go of your buckets. Stop trying to shove everything in there, and it'll be a lot easier to process this stuff. And so, what is the deception? We have to continually ask this question: what precisely is the deception? Well, we can know what a deception is based on the message. So, if you have the existence of gray aliens, if they're real, that's not a deception. Is that a deception? No, that's not a deception. That's just a fact. Okay, all right. I'm not going to try and cram that into one of these boxes to the Nephilim, fallen angel, what was the other one? Demon box. If it doesn't belong in there, I'm just going to go put it over here. That's just a reality. Okay, fine. Is that reality in and of itself a deception? No. The same exact way that the reality of Bigfoot isn't a deception. Is the reality of Bigfoot a deception?
No.
Would you say that's a deception? Would you say that the reality of Sasquatch is in and of itself a deception? Very few people would make that case because it's irrational. So I'm just asking people to think consistently about everything. So what's the deception? The deception is the message that is coming. The deception is someone is going to come and deceive the world into believing that they're the Christ and lead the world into war with the Son of God. That's the deception. Lead the world into conflict with the Son of God. It's an imposter figure who's coming. And is all of this going to culminate in that? Yes. See, so here I am with you now, with you, a lot of people in the audience, not you guys, where I would acknowledge, and I'm sure you guys would as well, that yes, the consequences of some of this, the ramifications are going to play into the deception. I'm there. I wrote a book about this called Birthright. Mm-hmm. I'm there. We're headed there regardless. We're headed there not just with gray alien stuff and all of that. We're headed there with transhumanism. We have a post-apocalyptic, rather a post-human apocalypse brooding on the horizon like a hurricane. And the deception is there, but the deception is the message. It's not the realities. So people need to differentiate between the things that are real and the deception that is coming. Yes, perhaps based on these things that are real, but you need to be able to differentiate that in your head. The existence of biological gray aliens is not itself a deception. Be prepared for the deception, but you're okay. If you believe in the gospel of Christ and your roots go deep, you're prepared for the deception already.
So then back to my question, how close do you think we are based on your conversations and contacts to an actual disclosure event? Do you think that's...
I think it's inevitable because we don't control the phenomenon. We can't dial it down. You can't be like, oh, there's too much UFO activity. Let's turn this down. We don't have any control over the phenomenon. None. So all we can do is control the narrative. And the reason why the disclosure is happening is because the phenomenon is burgeoning. And it cannot be stopped. And at this point in time, it's better to get in front of the narrative, to control it, than to be backpedaling and just denying the obvious, right? So do you have characters out there who are trying to frame the narrative in such a way that they are being deceptive and they want to control the way we think about this phenomenon? The answer is yes. You know who that is? It's called AARO. It's the Pentagon's UFO office, investigative body. Those are the deceivers. I can tell you that. Those guys are deceiving. Those guys are burying the truth. Their purpose is to deceive Congress first and foremost.
Why?
So that they won't have any further inquiries. So
But
that there will be so much. What AARO's been doing behind the scenes, and especially this activity was happening much more aggressively, I would say, a couple of years ago than it is now. But AARO would take a handful of UFO incidents, and then they're going to take the layups, the ones that are easy, right? And they'll go into Congress and they'll debunk the layups to the congressman. You know, here's this one, and this is a balloon, and here's this one over here, and that's just whatever. They debunk the layups. And the objective here is to quell the interest at the congressional level. Why? Because the people who are controlling the information and who have access to and who are controlling to some extent the black budget projects, they don't want the American people to know about this, and they definitely don't want congressional oversight. That's the last thing they want. I guarantee you that, okay? They don't want the American people to know that there have been crash retrievals in bodies. No, that's not the deception coming from the government. That's the thing the government is trying to keep the lid on. So when you got the other guys, Grush and Elizondo and the rest, coming and telling the truth, yes, we have crash retrievals, yes, we have bodies, the guys who are trying to keep the lid on this thing are not happy with them. They don't want us to know that because that opens up a host of uncomfortable questions. So it's very easy to deduce who's lying here. AARO's lying. Not Lou, not David, not the others who have come forward. AARO is lying. So what's the deception here? The deception is trying to convince the American people that elements of our government are not involved in this phenomenon, that we haven't been reverse engineering this technology, that we haven't recovered the bodies, and that we're not working with aerospace companies to develop this technology. That's the deception. You want to talk about deception? There it is. So
do you think we won't get actual disclosure then?
No, we will.
Okay.
Because we can't control the phenomenon. And eventually, the Greys, for example, have an objective. We don't control their. They're going to execute their plan regardless of what we do. The Pentagon has no control over what the Greys are doing.
So in this film, let's just say all the UFO guys that are like feel like there's a sense of a social responsibility to help disclosure the public needs to know. Obviously, you don't agree about everything, right? In the Nephilim space, people don't agree about everything. What are the core things you think that these people that are part of this disclosure movement agree on? Like that they don't disagree?
You mean, are you talking about the central players?
Like
the actual effort for disclosure at the governmental level?
That actually want to try to be.
What do they agree on or what do they disagree on?
What do they agree on?
Okay, so they all agree. They all agree. I'm talking about the whistleblowers.
Yes.
The congressional guys are still trying to figure this thing out. The whistleblowers, they all agree, that there is a legacy crash retrieval program. Stone cold fact. It exists. It's being run, it's being operated by elements of the United States government, but primarily the aerospace contracting companies. And the aerospace contracting companies each have a piece of the puzzle. Nobody has the whole thing. And they are profiting off of this. Everything I've said so far, all of the whistleblowers agree with. Okay. B, there are biological bodies, some gray aliens and perhaps other kinds of things. There are biological bodies that have been recovered and that we've been studying for decades. They all agree on that. Okay. And C, there are elements inside of the United States government that are aggressively impeding the effort for disclosure. There is a secrecy faction in the government, a hostile secrecy faction that is not only trying to keep keep the lid on this thing, but is actively trying to destroy the people who come forward. That would be the other thing. That's a much better way to say it. That is the other thing that these guys agree on, because they've all experienced it firsthand, including Lou Elizondo. So,
is it dollars? Is it financial? Is that why they're...
There's a handful of very evident reasons why these guys want to keep the lid on this. One of them is because they're implicated in serious crimes against the American people. They don't want congressional oversight. So here you have, behind the scenes, you have whistleblowers, guys that have gone forward and testified in Congress, who are crusading behind the scenes for congressional oversight. Now, is there anybody in this audience listening to us who would be opposed to congressional oversight? Do we think that this technology should just be in the hands of the aerospace companies where there's no accountability? This is our money, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so raise your hand if you think oversight's a bad idea. Any rational person is going to say, no, oversight's a good idea, right? That's why Congress exists. So is the crusade for oversight good and just and appropriate? The answer is yes. So there's no deception there, right? This is just a rational response to a real problem that we have. The problem is these organizations, these elements of these aerospace contractors have gone rogue. We got a problem, okay? And the government has been implicated in very nefarious activities, illegal activities, because there's been no oversight. So getting oversight over this thing, is that a good idea or is that a bad idea? It's a good idea. Okay, so why don't we just get behind it? Why don't we just throw the flag on the field and say deception? Why not say, hey, wait a minute, this is a good effort here? Why would we be looking at a guy like, I'm going to bring up Lou because Lou's the one who gets all of the vitriol online. He's the one who much of it is aimed at. Why do people just bypass these facts? Like Lou is working for congressional oversight in the background. I know that for a fact, okay? He wants the American people to know about what certain elements, not everything, because he wants to keep our secrets, some of our military advantages. He wants to keep those secrets, which I think is rational. But he wants the American people to know fundamentally the most important realities about this phenomenon, because he believes that everyone has the right to know, okay? And then furthermore, he believes that the American people through Congress should have oversight. Those are elected officials. Those people should have oversight over this stuff, okay? So tell me how is he working for the bad guys here? Somebody show me how Lou Elizondo, and people say, well, he's published fake photos of UFOs, okay?
Everybody has.
I know for sure that he was very deeply embarrassed by that. Made a mistake, okay? But look what he's doing actively. Look what all these guys are doing actively. They're trying to let you know what's happening and put the American people back in control of this thing, this monster, right? Get control, get oversight over these illegal things that have been happening in the cover of darkness with our money and also black money that's been accrued through human trafficking and other very nefarious activities. These are the good guys.
Yeah.
And everybody writes them off as the bad guys because deception. Isn't that just such a convenient word? I don't understand it. I don't like it. Therefore, deception, right? Blue beam. I don't want to deal with the uncomfortable realities there. So I got this sticker, this bumper sticker that I just slap on any conversation that makes me feel uncomfortable. Blue beam, Nephilim, fallen angels. It's the same. But people aren't focusing on the realities.
Well, there's nobody that knows. There's not very many experts. I mean,
but many people who think they're experts.
Yes.
But just in our space,
State of the internet, everyone's an expert.
Everyone asks their favorite minister, influencer in the Christian space, what are your thoughts on aliens? And I think not only is that a bad thing to ask them, because even Heiser, famously said the seminary grads get 2 lectures on angels and demons, not courses, lectures. And then they're asked, What are your thoughts on angels?
Heiser was dead wrong about UFOs and aliens, by the way.
But my point is they're not equipped to answer these questions at all.
No, it's true. And
they don't know what they're just emotionally going to say something to you. That's it.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to tell people is this. There's a war going on right now. Yes, there's deception coming down the pipe. But I pursue the truth at every angle. I'm not afraid of the deception. I'm for the truth. Let the chips fall where they may. Mm-hmm. If you're worried about being deceived, then you need to go see that you're still in the faith. Double check if you're still in the faith, okay? Mm-hmm. If you're worried about being deceived. And unbelievers are going to be deceived no matter what, right? So I'm not worried about the deception. I know deception is coming, and I'll know it when I hear it. Mm-hmm. But when I see a group of people behind the scenes working to stop the bad guys, to stop the nefarious illegal programs taking place that involve human experimentation, human trafficking, and then I look over here at my fellow Christians who are just blasting these guys with all kinds of labels, just because this guy worked for this, and this guy was counterintelligence. This guy worked in the intelligence community. That is called ignorance. I see the battle that's unfolding, and if people had any idea of the levels of depravity and illicit activity that have been unfolding in darkness, and I would say very literally under our feet in the deep underground military bases, they would be appalled, and they would champion those individuals who are trying to get oversight and who are trying to bring these rogue elements of our government and the aerospace contractors to heel. Right?
That's
wouldn't you say, if this were a movie, wouldn't those guys be cast as the good guys in that movie?
Yeah.
Right? Wouldn't you be rooting for those guys to win? So what's wrong with us here? I'll tell you what's wrong. People are misinformed. There's too many squawkers out there talking about demons, pretending to have the answers to this from a biblical, theological perspective, but they're not dealing with the reality. They're not dealing with the facts. They don't know the people involved.
Well, it takes 10 years to get up to speed. It takes a long time looking into the data to know. I mean, I think...
And plus, we live in a time when everybody wants the easy answer. They want to pill for anything, and it's like that's the point, right? Like, oh, this is easy. It's deception. Demons. And it's much more nuanced than that.
Well, you can't convince Christians that giants were real. I mean, they're a tough bunch. We're a tough bunch, us Christians.
I'm all for having a defensive posture, making sure that you're guarding yourself from. But I'm not. There's a difference between being wise, being cunning as a serpent, right?
Yeah.
But gentle as a dove, and being paranoid.
Okay, so
there's a big difference there. I'm not paranoid. I'm not worried about deception because I just ground myself in the gospel of Christ.
So we have the whistleblowers who believe in those three things. The government's actively trying to squash this. That the retrieval program is real, and what's the other one?
Biologics,
bodies,
and then there's elements of our government that are actively trying to obfuscate this reality.
Right. And then there's other characters in this space who are nefarious, who believe these things, but are actively involved trying to poo-poo it all. So they don't get along with the whistleblowers.
I named one specifically.
Yeah.
The all domain anomaly. What the hell was Arrow called? I can't remember what the acronym for Arrow is. But
so people who work for that, and there's other.
Yeah, Arrow is clearly, as I said earlier, that's a deceptive body.
But there's people that get kind of ousted from the UFO community because of one thing or another.
Because of a mistake. This is the one field where if you make a mistake, you're instantly written off as a propagandist or something like that. You're written off as somebody who's working for the feds.
So listeners probably who haven't turned off this show because they're Christians, who are some good Christians that are with you, that are giving good information, you think, that they could tune into?
Boy, that's a difficult question to answer. I don't want to implicate anybody one way or the other. I would say that there's a lot, as I keep saying, there's a lot of voices.
It should be a network or something.
We're working on that behind the scenes. There's a lot of voices squawking, okay? But we have enough information to know what the situation is and what to support, right? And that information has been, it's not hidden. It's not hidden. I'm not revealing anything new here. it's been available in the public space for so long, and yet people refuse to accept it. They refuse. Lou told me something very interesting the other day. He said, we're finally telling the truth, and nobody believes us.
Yeah.
Nobody believes us. So we have a problem. It's cognitive dissonance. We have convinced ourselves that everything's a lie, everything's a deception, and that's not wisdom, that's foolishness. Because we're missing the battle. We're missing the battle. And it's frustrating to me because I clearly see the efforts that are in opposition to these guys. And rather than having unanimous support from good people in the Christian community, everybody's over here still arguing about whether these are Nephilim or fallen angels or whether these are, the whole thing's just Project Bluebeam. And it's very frustrating because we're getting to a point, and I tweeted about this the other day, or made a post on X about this the other day. We're getting to this paradox where even if the government starts telling the truth about things, nobody's going to believe it. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. It doesn't even matter if it's the Epstein files. If the government opens up the Epstein files and it doesn't live up to these wild conspiracy theories, everyone's going to disbelieve it because they're going to say, "Oh, you're just lying. You're covering it up." But what if they're not? What if that's just what it is? And you have blown it into something. You have created this fantasy in your mind, and because reality doesn't conform to your fantasy, you are therefore going to deny reality. That's where we are. We're there, and I think it's a type of conspiracy psychosis that we've reached, which is I think it's injurious especially to the Christian community.
So you would say this is like one of the number one things that Christians should know about, should be informed of, and should be advocating, like, and
yes, I think
people believe.
I think that we should be willing to.
What do you think they should do? Second question.
I think that we should be slow to make accusations. People get caught up in this happens in the Christian community. You guys can attest to this, just reading your comments on your social media and stuff.
Love them comments.
People get caught up in the social media atmosphere of hostility, and they comport themselves in a way that is not becoming of a Christian online because they feel like they have some sort of license to do that online and to act irrationally and to make accusations. Why? Because that's what people do on social media. So be careful that you don't become an accuser. And it's easy to accuse. It's easy to deride. It's difficult to parse fact from reality. It's difficult to take the time to try and truly understand a topic and not revert to the binary options that social media presents you with, and then to join in the chorus of accusers and mockers. That's very easy, and Christians, they go out there and they comport themselves in the same way that other people do, and you don't have license to do that. You don't. I mean, if you're a believer, you should not feel the liberty to go out there and do that because it's in cyberspace. You should have wisdom. You should act in a way that conforms to your faith in Christ and as a believer, and you should want to know the truth regardless of where it takes you. You need to desire the truth and to support those people who are telling you the truth. And you can say, well, I don't believe in telling you the truth. And again, I'm going to say, and I know we got to wrap it up here, but if you're going to say that, if you're going to accuse people of lying, then you have to be specific about what they're lying about. You can't just blanket accuse somebody of lying and write them off as a deceiver without addressing specifically the lie that you think they're telling, because that's called baseless accusation.
Yeah.
And there is an accuser in the Bible. His name is Satan. That's precisely what his name means. We don't have license to make baseless accusations. For whatever reason, Christians think that they're allowed to make baseless accusations.
Well, I don't think we realize that we're often the complaining Israelite in the story. We're not Moses.
That's a very good point.
Moses is running from the Egyptians. He's got that going on. He's got all the people complaining to him, and it's always the one guy that's willing to tune it all out and try his hardest to continue to do God's will. And I think we all think we're the Moses in the story. We all think, oh yeah, I'm doing the right thing. I've got the right information. And usually we're hindering Moses. We're making his job harder.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
I agree with that. I think that's correct. Yeah.
And he's got a thing to do. He's got to lead the people through the craziness. He's got to deliver us. And I think Christians are just, I don't know, is it a spirit or something else? But
well, thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
This is I think it's always timely, and I think especially as the rest of the populace wakes up to the realities of disclosure, even through a film like this, that it's so important. As we talked about Christians, it's so important that as people of faith and Christians that we talk about these things. We have these discussions. We look for the evidence and the facts, the research, the data, and we create our opinions and our conclusions based upon that, rooted in the gospel, and not on the propaganda or the deception that we talked about. So I appreciate it, man. There's you're on the cutting edge of so many things. You're looking for lost cities in Peru, but I know, and our audience will know now if they didn't before, that you're very plugged in to the key players and movers and shakers in this space. And so it's really an honor again to have you in the space, in the studio, and to talk about, I think what I think is some of the most important things that we can talk about in public discourse right now is talk about this, because there are films, because we have oversight, and because these topics are going to be in our faces, if not already sooner than we can imagine.
And I want to reiterate that I'm not here to defend the intelligence community.
Sure.
I'm not here to defend the government. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not simping for the CIA or something like that. I'm just trying to tell everybody that I know that there are nefarious activities that have been happening behind the scenes based on the technology that we have derived from non-human intelligence. It's being used to do terrible things, and the good guys are trying to get it under control.
Mm-hmm. Mic drop.
Okay? That's what I'm telling you. And be careful that you are not, I'm not saying you guys, be careful out there in cyberspace that you are not falsely accusing these people when they are battling some of the most despicable and dangerous elements of human society. You want to be on the right side of that battle, not on the wrong side of that battle. Yeah. That's where I am, okay? I saw what they were doing in Peru to these villagers.
Yeah.
I believe Michael Herrera's testimony, and I can tell you who the enemy is. The people who are perpetrating this stuff and who are hiding this reality, who want to keep the lid on this thing, they're the enemy. Because when you allow this kind of stuff to proliferate in the shadows, this monster is going to grow. And we are complicit in some of this because we have turned a blind eye. And now we have people saying, hey, guess what? This is real. There's no oversight. Hello, American people.
Yeah.
And instead of turning a blind eye or grabbing one of those bumper stickers and slapping it on there and pretending like you got this thing figured out, I think we need to just think deeply about this and make sure that we are on the right side of this battle.
Mm-hmm. Right side of history.
Yeah, that's the fight that's happening at the congressional level.
And we got a big movie coming out this summer.
Not as big as our book that's coming out sometime this year too.
That's
Book
right.
of Giants. But yeah, that to come. Thanks, Tim.
That never ends.
Yeah.
That's for next time.
That is for next time.